Hey, David here with Freedom Electric Marine. Today, let's talk about an option to your twin troller X10, and that is this 2 horsepower Honda outboard motor. Now, the first thing I want to make very clear is that this is an option to your twin troller. The twin troller is not required to operate the twin troller. As you know, if you've been around the site and you've looked at why this is the world's best fishing boat, the twin troller has 2 trolling motors that are recessed in its hull, and you control those motors with the foot pedals so that you can go anywhere you want, around in circles, forwards, backwards, anything, and that's how you're going to spend your time fishing with the twin troller. So you may not need this Honda 2 horsepower outboard motor, but let's talk about why you may want to have this Honda 2 horsepower motor. And I think the easiest way to come to that conclusion, for me anyway, is I'm at Johns Lake in Central Florida, and Johns Lake's a pretty good sized lake. It's about 4,500 acres, I think, something like that. And I have spent many a days out on this lake in this boat without this outboard motor. And there's plenty of places to fish. However, if I want to get to some of the remote areas on the back end of Johns Lake, then I will want to put this outboard motor on the twin troller for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to get me to where I want to fish. So how do you know whether or not you're going to need this motor? Well, I think a good guideline is that if you plan to travel more than 2 miles on the water from where you launch your twin troller to where you want to actually fish, you might want to seriously consider getting this outboard motor. And the reason for that is, of course, these motors are the twin troller motors. If you're using a Series 29 battery, you can go for 3 hours non-stop with both motors going, which it's highly unlikely that you're going to use up the battery power. I have never used it up while you're out fishing for a day. However, if you need to have both those motors on for an extended amount of time, say a half an hour, 45 minutes to get to your destination of where you actually want to fish, then you're going to be constantly thinking throughout the day, okay, do I have enough to get back home? So for that reason, you might want to consider this particular motor. And not to mention, this thing will get you there faster than the twin troller motors will get you there. So enough about why you might want this motor. Let's talk about the motor itself, and I'm going to bring you in a little closer and we'll talk about some of the features of this great motor. This right here is the oil level indicator, and I'm going to go ahead and take the camera off the tripod here, and I'm going to get in tight and let you take a look at this. It's going to be kind of hard to see, but in this indicator right here, there's a little line, and operationally you want the oil level to be at that line or a little bit below it, between the bottom and at that line. You don't want to get it up over the top of that. That's the actual oil level indicator, and that's something that you of course want to make sure is working before you take your motor out on the water, because you don't want it freezing up on you while you're out there. And of course this, I'm sure you're familiar, you know what this is. This is the handle to run this thing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I'm actually out on the water. But it's real simple, clockwise is slow, counterclockwise gets the motor going. You have a little a nut here, or a little screw, where if you tighten it up, it tightens up the throttle. So if you want to leave it tight, you can leave it in a locked position. This right here is a very important piece of equipment. This is the start or stop button, I should say, and this is what you're going to attach to your buckle, or around your arm, however you want to do it. I recommend you flip it on a belt buckle, so that if you for some reason fall out of the boat, it'll pull this off and it'll shut the motor off. And then of course you need to have this in this position in order to operate the motor. Now let me go ahead and turn the motor around a little bit. This right here is of course the handle. If you are going to be carrying this motor around, it only weighs 27 pounds. It's really light. This is how you want to carry it. I talk about a little bit later the positioning of the motor, how you don't want to have it on one side. You want to have it tilted with the throttle handle in the up position. If you flip it the other way, meaning if you have it over like this, with this down and you lay it down, then oil leaks down into the shaft and things like that, and that's just not something you want to do. This of course is just the pull start, pretty self-explanatory. This is the gas cap. One thing I want to point out about this gas cap, there's a little knob on the top. You take it counterclockwise And that is the operational position because it allows air to flow in, and of course it helps drive gas into the carburetor and whatnot. When you screw it clockwise, you want to screw it clockwise till it's tight when you are transporting, or when you are tilting this thing up, and I mentioned that a little bit later too, so that you don't leak any gas out of here. If we turn around a little bit more, this right here is simply the choke for the engine. If you're starting it cold, you know, those of you who know how to use a choke, you're going to want to pull this thing out and use the choke to get it started. And then over here on this side over here is a very important feature. This is the gas. Of course, here you've got the on position and you've got the off position. You might want to just get in a habit of, when you are not operating this motor, just kind of, you know, get in a habit of pulling it in the off position and tightening this up. Now this motor, you'll notice right now I've got it on the back sitting on the transom, and it's in an upright position, of course. Now when you're out fishing, and I'll show you this when we get out on the water, there's going to be times where you're not going to want to leave it in this position, so you're going to want to, you know, of course, tilt it up. Now it's important that you do a few things before you tilt it up so you don't get yourself in a mess. One of those is you want to turn off the gas, of course. You want to tighten this knob at the top of the gas cap to seal in the cap before you tilt it, because if you tilt it and you don't do either one of these things, it's going to start leaking in the back of your boat, and you're not going to want that. So you want to tighten this up and you want to turn off the gas. The other thing that you want to take into consideration is, it talks about this in your manual, this motor, you either leave it upright or you tilt it on its side only in one direction, and that direction is with the handle on top. So for example, you don't want to tilt this motor this way. Does that make sense? So what you're going to want to do is, of course, also this motor won't let you tilt it unless you're in this position right here pointing to the back. So if I, for example, was like this, it's not going to let me tilt because it's locked in back here, and that's a good thing. But you get it in the straight position, and it'll allow you to tip it or tilt it. See how it let me do that? Now, of course, once again, I'm making sure this is tight. I'm making sure that my gas is in the off position, and then I can simply tilt it this way, and I can move it back, and as I move it back, it locks in right here so that it will not move. Now in this position, you can take your twin trawler out fishing, and you can do, you know, you can go into those 8 inches of water and places like that, and get to the places that what makes the twin trawler the world's best fishing boat. And this motor will not be being dragged along the bottom. Now, of course, while you're doing this, you want to be aware that it's back here. You don't want to be spinning around and banging into a dock or something like that. But this is how you will find yourself, the position this motor will be in most of the time you are actually fishing. And then to get it back, it's real simple. There's a little lever right here. You just lift the motor up just a teeny bit, pull that lever up, and it'll come down. And then once again, remember, it will not lock in until you turn it. So you want to turn it into the position, the operational position, and then it'll just pop right in, and you're good to go. Well, you know, that's about it. I can't think of anything else about this motor. Let's head out on the water, and I'll show it to you operating on the water. And you know, it's a great little motor. I don't have anything bad to say about it. It's a 4-stroke. In case you don't know what that means, it simply means that the way that the engine operates, you don't need to mix the oil with the fuel. You just simply put the gas in here and go. Of course, you need to make sure that your oil levels are good, but it's just an add gas and go kind of motor. It's relatively quiet, and it's very efficient, and it just sips gas. It has about a 1/4 gallon gas tank, as I said before, and you can go about an hour on that. It's just a great little addition to the twin trawler if you need it. But if you don't need it, hey, head out on your twin trawler and enjoy fishing the world's best fishing boat just using your foot pedals in the small lakes that you have around your house. Okay, so here I am out on the water. I've got my motor here. Get ready to start it up. First thing I want to mention is I'm sitting on the gunnel here, and you know, my twin trawler, I'm not worried about it tipping over. It's not going to tip over. Normally I would be sitting in a chair, you know, one of the chairs here on the trawler, but for the purpose of this video, I want you to be able to kind of see what I'm doing, which is why I'm not sitting on a chair, okay? Normally I would be sitting on a chair. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little cable here, and I'm going to hook it to my belt buckle. Of course, I'm standing up on the twin trawler. I'm not worried about that either. I do that all the time. And it is attached to the start button here. You can see it's clipped on, or the stop button, depending on how you want to define it. And you just simply clip that on. You need that on there in order for the boat to start. And if I fall out of the boat while we're operating, hopefully it won't do while I'm doing this video, the motor would stop and I could get back to the boat and not have to swim back to shore. So that's an important feature. Now this motor also has a centrifugal clutch, which means that if the RPMs are below 2,700, it's not going to engage the propeller. So depending on the condition of when you're starting it, whether it's cold or things like that, but you should be able to have it below that. And there really isn't a gauge here for you to know where that is, and you'll kind of get used to where it's at. And so you want to set your throttle just up a little bit, not too much. And then you may need to pull the choke if you're starting it cold. Of course, you're going to want to unscrew this counterclockwise, not the cap itself, but the thing on top. You're going to want to take your the lever on the left-hand side here to the back, which is the gas on position. And we're pretty much ready to go. All we need to do is just pull the motor and it should start right up. And there it is. Okay, now you can see it's going, and I'm not going anywhere because the propeller is not engaged yet. But if I give it a little gas, now it's engaged and we're going to start moving. Now this motor is really quiet for a for an outboard motor. Right now I'm running pretty low. I don't have it maybe 3,000, 3,500 RPMs. But I'm going to go ahead and crank it up and you can see how loud it is and how fast we're going to go. Okay, so let's just say if I've arrived at my fishing destination. Of course, I'm not going to want to fish with this. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it down, and if I want to turn this off, all I have to do is press this button or just pull this out, and the motor will go off. And you can leave it in this position if you want to while you're fishing, depending on how deep the waters are where you're at. For example, if you're I would say at least 2 feet or more water, you can, go around with your twin troller motors. But if you start getting into that real shallow stuff, you're going to want to prop this thing up. I get in the habit of just propping it up anyway because I just have no need to leave it in the water and having it run into anything. So pulling it up is really easy. All you got to do, remember I talked about this earlier. First thing is you want to turn down the gas cap there. You want to take the lever on the back of the motor here and pull that towards you, which is turning the gas off. And then you just want to make sure that you tilt this in the right direction. You don't want to have the handle down. So the first thing I'm going to do is just tilt the motor up. And then I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise. I've got the handle on top, and if I pull it up, I kind of like to just make sure that this is tight. I pull it up, it locks right into position. See that? It's locked into position, and if I want to go back, as I described earlier in the video, I won't go ahead and get into that. But that's all there is to it. Sure is a neat little motor, isn't it? Well, so that's my a brief description, if you will, of the 2 horsepower Honda motor. We offer it as an option, of course, here with the twin troller. All I can say is, once again, you don't need this motor if you're on a lake, say 1,000, 1,500 acres or less, or you're just out in the pond or something. You're just not going to use it, most likely. But if you're in a larger lake or a river system, or maybe you're out on the coastal flats of Florida or North Carolina, South Carolina, things like that, you may want to have this motor for one purpose and one purpose only, is to get you to where you want to fish. And if that's the case for you, you will not be disappointed having this motor. And let me tell you something, if you do get this motor, you will have the ultimate fishing boat, and you will not find a situation that you'll run into where you can't go and truly have an enjoyable day out on the water using the twin troller, the world's best fishing boat. You take care.